Hey there, welcome to this episode of Tennessee Farm to Family. Let our team of extension agents bring the farm to your family. We'll explore all things agriculture and talk about how it gets to your table, fridge, or pantry. Meet farmers, stomp out misinformation, and grab a sneak peek into agri-search and outreach efforts.
All right. Well, hey, we're happy to have y'all join us today, and we're excited about our new series where we're going to take a field trip and meet some farmers throughout West Tennessee. The first topic of our episode today is beef, and we've talked about that in our previous episodes, but in this series, we're going to try to highlight each food product or commodity and connect you to how it's grown and actually meet a farmer that's growing it here in West Tennessee. So we hope you'll join us. We're excited about it. And so let's just kick it off giving an overview of how beef is produced and the sectors of the industry.
Well, I'll start. I think, hopefully we've got some folks that listen in that are maybe not connected to ag as some are. So I think discussing the segments of the industry, especially here in Tennessee, West Tennessee, however you want to call it. And that's a cow-calf industry. That's the farmer that produces the baby calf, that owns the factory, owns the mama. Then we have the next segment of that industry is our stocker operation. So they take that calf after he's grown up halfway, and he'll keep growing him on grass. And then we have the next segment will be our feed yards or feedlot industry. And that can look a lot of different ways, from grass-fed to corn-fed, a hybrid of those two. Then we go into the processing facility, which is typically not here on a large scale, but we have a lot of small business processing facilities here in Tennessee.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important. How many around this table are cow-calf producers? So all of us, and that's the primary industry or sector in Tennessee. I think you have some stats about that.
Yes. Right now, Tennessee is ranked number 13 in the nation for total beef cattle production. It's really one of the top three agricultural commodities for Tennessee year after year. We've got about 45,000 operations in the state, somewhere around 2 million total head of beef cattle. And as for all of our agricultural receipts across the state year after year, beef cattle is about 16% of our total cash receipts. So it's a big economic driver within the state, and within the segments of the industry that we talked about. Of course, cow-calf is the primary part that we see here in West Tennessee. But before we even get to cow-calf, we've also got quite a few seed stock producers or registered folks that are raising registered cattle and really kind of steering the way that our genetics are developed through breeding some of those really high-end purebred cattle, and that trickles on down to the cow-calf industry. So it can get pretty complex, but it's an industry I'm glad to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's not enough probably people know about the seed stock producers, and that's part where they hone in on genetics to try to select for things that improve the quality of beef and the amount of beef that we have at the grocery store and our, to feed our family. So seed stock producers is that sector initially, and then from there it goes to usually you're buying a registered bull and putting on crossbred cows to have those calves that you sell off that kind of enter the food chain that way. And then all the byproducts too, we didn't intend to talk about, but I just thought about that's also a big business. So there's essentially zero waste when you talk about this, because there's a big byproduct industry as well. Yeah.
Most of your ladies' makeup comes from the byproducts.
Yes, I had some this morning on my face.
Ladies' makeup, but a lot of medical stuff as well. I mean, that's just like some of the arteries and valves that they use in cardiology and whatnot. We get a lot of that from beef cattle. A lot of that comes from hogs as well. But I mean, it's like you said, it's a zero waste kind of industry. And I mean, we talk about efficiency and sustainability long term and everything. I don't know how you get much more sustainable and efficient than what we're doing already within the beef cattle industry. It's a beautiful thing, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. In certain cultures, I mean, we like our certain types of meat and cuts of meat, but you may go down the road and you could get lingua, beef tongue, or dream stomach, and that's a primary source of protein.
Oh yeah, yeah. And if cooked right, it's pretty doggone.
It is. It is.
No, thanks. I'm out, guys.
I like the lingua.
Yeah, so like we said, the cow-calf producer sells those calves, and that's really the point of entry into the food chain.
Mhm.
From there, they take a different route. Brian mentioned the stockers or backgrounders, where we're adding weight essentially on grass of various types. And usually with these changes of ownership, they're moving across the country, generally speaking.
Yep.
Now, part of COVID, we were seeing a lot more demand for people wanting to buy local. And I think now's a good point to introduce our series of field trips. So each episode for the next few, we're going to take a field trip and actually meet a farmer. And so today we're going to go visit Derek Giffen up in Obion County. He has some cattle and also backgrounding some. So that was one sector. And so enjoy this time with Garrett and Derek on their farm.
All right, guys, welcome back to Tennessee Farm to Family Podcast. I'm Garrett McDaniel, I'm an extension agent. We are up here in Obion County with Derek Giffen, one of our local farmers here, and we're going to interview him about row crop and beef cattle, sustainability and stuff like that today. So start off with Derek. Tell me a little bit about your farm you got going on.
Sure. I'm a fifth generation farmer here in Obion County, Union City, Tennessee. We grow corn, soybeans, wheat. We grow cover crops, and we also have a beef cattle herd that we graze on perennial pasture throughout the year and on cover crops.
Okay. So you're growing row crops, and you're using your beef cattle in your row crop rotation as well?
I am.
Okay,
Yeah.
so tell me a little bit about that. So you raise them up on pasture, starting out until weaning, something like that. Is that how you typically do that?
Typically in the past, we would have a cow-calf operation. We would have those calves, then we would wean the calves and put them on cover crop in the fall. Recently, I've gotten to where I'm trying to graze all the cattle on cover crops in the fall / winter through the spring. It's just good for the cattle, and they enjoy it.
Now, does that
It's
save
cheap
you on
feed.
some hay costs and stuff in the winter as well?
It does, yeah. I mean, there is a cost to the cover crop, but cattle do really well on cover crop, and I don't have to feed hay every day, so
That's
it's kind of
right.
a win-win.
That's right. So how far are you taking these cattle past? Are you taking them all the way to maturity till you take them to the processing plant or something like that?
So some of them we will. We've got a custom beef business that we sell custom beef to the general public, quarters, halves, and wholes.
Okay.
We don't feed out all of them, but we feed out as many as we have customers for.
Okay.
And they'll submit like a pre-order, and we'll take their name information. Usually it's done 3 to 6 months in advance, just to make sure that I've got the steers and everyone's committed, just because it's a fairly large expense.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
you just kind of have to plan ahead for that.
Okay.
But we do feed out several that go to individual families in the community.
Yeah. So those have been raised here, fed here on grain and cover crop, pretty much all from here.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
awesome.
Now we will buy some local cattle just within the county here.
Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot of cow-calf pairs, so I'll usually buy a few calves out in the county or surrounding county, bring them home. I'll graze them on cover crops in the fall too.
Okay. Awesome. So now we were also talking before we started the interview about y'all just got back into raising pork.
Yep.
Is that right? So tell me a little bit about that.
Yep. Kind of a heritage thing, I guess you would call it.
That's right, that's right.
I grew up around pigs, and my dad did too, and we've just had them for a long time. And I've got a couple little boys now, and Dad thought we needed to get a few more, so
That's right,
we're
that's
raising
right.
hogs again and selling them also.
Okay, so you're doing some local, like half and whole, and same thing you're doing with your beef.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay. Now, are you doing any end product, anything like that?
like retail?
Yeah, like that.
We used to. We used to do that pretty heavily. Just takes a lot of time, a lot of manpower, but we will still sell a few cuts here and there. Just kind of a special situation type thing. Ground beef is really easy to handle and maneuver. Steaks are a little bit more challenging just because every cut has its own weight and it gets to be a little hectic. But
For sure.
we will sell some ground beef
Okay.
retail.
So what is your favorite probably benefit from working the row crop and the cattle together on those cover crops? What's the main benefit to you for that?
There's several. I mean, first of all, I really enjoy the combination. It's a very symbiotic relationship in my mind. Growing your regular row crop in the summer, and then you're planting a cover crop on those acres, which has a ton of benefits, erosion control, soil armor throughout the rest of the year. You're laying organic matter back down on the ground.
Yep.
Gives you a really good opportunity to bring the cattle in, graze that cover crop. It's exceptionally high, nutrient content for them.
Yeah.
They love it. They do really well. They gain weight really well on it. They just work really well together. So while the cattle are grazing, we'll rotationally graze those cattle through those cover crop fields.
Yeah.
Reason we do that, they're applying manure while they're grazing and while they're there.
Absolutely.
So
that's helping out your future row crop.
it is, yeah. There are so many beneficial things, and I'm getting off here a little bit, but in a cattle rumen, there's so much beneficial biology in a rumen.
Yeah.
It's unlike any other animal. But if you can harvest some of that biology and put it back onto the ground, you're just kind of propelling the soil biology and the soil health for the future, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. And I think doing the whole local, cover crops, getting everything to work together, selling local, stuff like that's kind of a big thing right now. And I think it's a worthy practice to be in. So we're proud you're doing it here. So I appreciate your time today. And if y'all want to know more, just tune in to some other Tennessee Farm to Family podcast episodes.
All right. So you see some good things that Derek's doing up there, and really a model farmer, in my opinion, for the industry, and concerned about the environment and doing lots of good things to get beef to your plate. And then from there, Brian mentioned the feedlots, and I think out of all the sectors, they probably get beat up the most. When you hear the word factory farming, a lot of times those are the big industrious feedlots that, of course, they're usually where they don't get a lot of precipitation, so they look, it's not real pleasing, aesthetically pleasing to the eye like it is, it might be here with a cow-calf producer on a, green hillside. So talk about the feedlot industry a little
Well,
bit.
and our climate is just not best suited for large scale. I mean, we have lots of producers in our state that feed cattle to a finished state, on a small scale, say 15, 20, 25, whatever. But you get into the large scale operations, which is just a scale of efficiencies, all it is. So their feed source is in the Midwest. Corn is the primary feed source, so we send the cattle to the feed source instead of bringing the feed source to the cattle. So, but you get in those drier climates to where they're raining 15 to 25 inches a year, where we're looking at 50 to 60 inches a year. So it's a mud factor, really.
Yeah.
So that's why the industry is where it's at, and it's primarily from a precipitation and a feed source.
Yeah.
Right. And that mud factor plays into that animal's well-being as well. I mean, here in Tennessee, like he was saying, we get about 50 inches of rain. If we've got those animals in a dry lot feeding them, it gets muddy real quick. And we know that based on research, the deeper the mud is, the more that it's going to impact that animal's core body temperature. It's also going to reduce their overall efficiency on feed. So by moving them to a drier climate, being able to mitigate that mud and mitigate their environment, we can count on better animal health, higher rates of gain, and it's just a matter of efficiency as well as that animal's well-being.
You talk about animal welfare, even in them big ones, those guys understand if that animal's not comfortable, if he's not pleasant, he will not be as efficient.
Yes.
And you drive by them and they've got shades, they've got sprinkler systems, they've got all those things to make those animals as comfortable as possible.
Well, and I think that's a big thing that people overlook when we're talking about animal welfare and animal well-being, that not just for the beef industry, but when we talk about poultry, swine, the farmers that are producing these animals are definitely concerned about their well-being, because they produce more efficient, rate of gain and that sort of thing. So it helps their business efficiency, like you all have mentioned. All right, so we finish them out. Let's mention from the time a calf's born. So what age are we talking about that they're harvested for beef?
So from the time that that animal is born on a cow-calf operation, it's generally going to be right there with the mother. It's going to be on grass and going to be getting good milk and grass right up until it's at weaning age, which is usually around 6 to 7 months, ideally around 600 pounds or so. And ideally, it'd be a little bit heavier than that. But at that point, that animal is going to go most oftentimes to the stockyard or to a stocker producer. And from there, it's going to be going and put on grass. And so it's going to be grazing grass. A lot of times, especially if we're out west, we're looking maybe at wheat and ryegrass pasture and trying to get that weight raised up before it goes on to a feedlot. So, Brian, you might could speak.
Yeah, and I mean,
that.
they'll spend, 90, 100 days at that stalker operation, and it'll be a similar time frame once they go to the feed yard. And it really kind of depends on what weight they go in the feed yard. So we're looking at somewhere in that 8 to 850 range, and they're going to spend probably 140 days on feed. And it just depends on the type of animal. Some animals will finish sooner than others. Depends on their frame. It just depends on some factors, but somewhere in that 120 to 150 days that they'll spend in the feed yard.
So 6 or 7 months to weaning, then post weaning 3 or 4 months on grass, and then another 3 or 4 months in the feed yard finishing.
Right.
So you're looking at, a yearling plus animal that goes to be harvested for food. So that's kind of a general timeline with there's all kinds of exceptions and genetics and frame size and all this. There's a science behind all of it. But just to give you all an idea, that's the age of animal that we're talking about. So it's a big issue to us in the industry. So the beef herd is shrinking. And that means pounds of beef at the grocery store is less unless we make radical improvements in the things that we do. So you might pay more for beef, it looks like for
quite some time.
quite a while. Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure somebody can fact check this and get the numbers correct. But I won't be too far off in saying that you take from, say, the 70s and 80s to now, our beef cattle herd is 30% less. So there's less cattle in the United States than there were in those time frames, but we're producing more beef than we did then. So we're producing more with less. And that goes back to the old word that comes up in every conversation is sustainability. We're doing more with less.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to also look at the beef industry and understand they're kind of the last of the Mohicans in the way that our business model is, where when we talk about other proteins such as poultry or pork, it's more of an integrated system, where a company's going to kind of have a system of what's going to go through. And the cattleman truly is still his own boss. And I think that's very unique with this business, that he makes those decisions. He makes the decisions on genetics, on animal care, on marketing, all those types of things. But he is also kind of at the mercy of the market and how it goes. So there's no contracted price. There's no guarantee this is going to make, and that makes him or her a little unique, because the beef industry truly is still kind of on their own. And it's kind of how we come into the play of that is, with our BQA certifications and things like that, to ensure the customer that there are certain things that are happening behind the scenes that are going. And some of our practices get bad raps, vaccinations or antibiotics or whatever, which we've kind of discussed before. But one, that's up to that cattleman. But you also have to understand that he's making a profit, and a sick animal is not making a weight. And at the end of the day, he gets paid on weight. So, he has those choices to make, and that's kind of where we are. And I'm more of a row crop agent today than I am a forage and livestock agent. But I always stress to my cattlemen, you're more of a grass farmer than you are a cattle farmer any day.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going into their system that they really have to think about. Whereas when you look at the other protein industries, some things are taken care of you and some things are out of your hands, whether that's good or bad. But the cattleman has a lot of decisions that have to be made.
And with that, there's a couple points I was thinking about. With that, he assumes all the risk. He
Yes.
still is his own boss and makes those decisions, but he's assuming all the risk, which is why you might find beef to be the last industry to go vertically integrated like our other proteins, meat proteins. So,
Right.
and then the other thing, I think we saw COVID, and I hate to reference this all the time, but that changed our culture. It changed our society in ways I still think we're figuring out. But one of those was we wanted to know where our food was coming from. And it's part of the reason we've kind of revamped this podcast to try to help educate those. But along those lines, people wanted to buy locally. So part of this series, yes, we're going to go out and meet a farmer, but we're also going to look at how beef is produced. You can buy beef that's grown in all of our counties. Most places have a producer or two that's doing, direct farm marketing and direct sales, either through freezer beef or a local processor. So let's talk about that just a minute. Kind of our small to mid-size operations that are retaining ownership, finishing cattle, or buying cattle locally and processing them locally. What does that look like in y'all's counties?
Got it. So Terrell mentioned that with beef cattle producers, they assume all the risk. I mean, they get to pick their way of marketing, and they are at the mercy of the markets. Along with being able to retain ownership and sell those beef cattle directly to consumers, that kind of gives that beef cattle producer a little bit of control over his pricing. He can kind of set his own price based on the cattle that he's got, the quality of those animals, and what money he's got invested with them. And that helps him to be able to mitigate a little bit and then also draw that connection with his consumer and find out what they want, and that's what he can produce for them. I myself and my family, we raise and sell direct to consumers, and that's the primary reason we do it is because we have a little bit more control over our price and it mitigates some of our risk. So what's some of the things that y'all are seeing in y'all's counties?
Well, see, on my end, so you've got, 5 or 10 different farmers with various heads of cattle, and we just use a cattle broker. So he's trying to fill up a load, ship out west, and he contacts all of us to say, hey, you have 500 weight, you have 600 weight, and we can pile all our cattle together and we ship it off. I mean, we're at the mercy of him. And if we're in a pinch, we go straight to the market. You got to pay the bill somehow. So sometimes it's dictated like that. Some of these farmers, cattle is sort of value added. So you're at the mercy of the market, and you know when it's time to, or when it's ready.
Yeah, and I think Tracy's reference to COVID changed some things, and I think there were some things that got changed for the better. And that, our farmers markets and our local producers, got back a little more spotlighted, I guess, or folks had that interest. And I encourage people, if you're interested in any of that, especially freezer beef, call your county agent, call your county office. And like in my county, I've got a laundry list of folks. Depends on what you want. Do you want grass fed? Do you want corn fed? Do you want red ones with green tails or green ones with red tails? I mean, we can find you almost anything you need, and it puts that personal connection. But one thing I done, this is not research based. This was just Terrell's just a kind of county agent trying to figure out something. So I had some requests. Folks said, well, if I went to the grocery store and bought a whole animal, what would it cost me? That information is not out there. So I've done that. So I basically went and took the prices at the local grocery stores. And then I had some folks, one of them was a secretary in my office. They had bought up beef. And whenever they got ready to go get it, I just went with them. I said, hey, we're just going to get it. So we weighed all the steaks. We weighed all the ground beef, separated it all out. So I put it on a piece of paper. And if I'd went and bought that exact same animal at the grocery store, it would have cost $700 more than if they bought that from that particular producer.
Right.
And like Hargrove said, there will be different prices. Folks price their stuff a little different based on quality and how it was raised and what the components are. But I thought that was interesting to find out that even though I can buy it local, I can buy it most likely more economically.
Oh, yeah. I buy usually half a beef a year freezer for my family. And once you pay for the processing and pay for the meat, like you're in it way cheaper per pound. And I didn't separate it out into cuts, but almost you're paying for every cut what you would pay in a grocery store for ground beef. So I think when people, but you're paying for, it's all frozen, it's not fresh, it's going to stay in the freezer a while. So you're paying for convenience when you go into the grocery store. And I just think, there's a price to that too, that people are willing to pay. And I would say also, ask the people at the farmers markets questions. We're going to have a farmers market series a little later on this summer too, where we're meeting farmers that sell and vendors at our farmers markets. But if you really want to buy local, make sure they're selling you something that's local. Freezer beef is one. All meat products. I mean, people are harvesting more locally, and some of our regulations have gotten a little easier, so it's easier for them to do and make a living, like I said, selling direct to consumer. So there's room at the table proverbially for all of us. I think, we don't want to, there's room for all of it. Freezer beef, big box grocery store beef. I mean, lots of hours go there too. So don't be discouraged about that either.
And I can understand the consumer sticker shock when say you want to, you've got a family and you want to buy a whole beef. That's all that money at one time you pay for the processing and all that. But I do encourage them to talk with those producers, because lots of them sell halves and even quarters. So it's not as sticker shock so much in the beginning. Even though we can save some money, I understand, coughing up $3,000 or $4,000, but you're filling your freezer for a year to year and a half.
And it's a space thing too, because if you buy a whole beef, you better have a big deep freeze somewhere or two.
I got a whole one coming in next week, and I've got to figure out how to clean my freezer out to fit the rascal.
Well, you can distribute it to us.
I might have y'all over for burgers.
Saving the steak for the people he likes.
We've talked quite a bit on being able to buy direct from the farmers from a standpoint of custom exempt, but we do have some farmers out here that are slaughtering their beef through a USDA certified operation. Those farmers are able to sell direct to the public in a retail setting, where you could potentially go and buy from them piecemeal and get certain cuts and retail cuts like that. The take home point is we've got producers in every county that are selling direct to consumer. You've got to get out and look to find them. And so talk with your extension agents, talk with folks in the county that are already buying from these folks that are selling good local beef, and just find out what kind of stuff that they're producing, how they're selling it, and how you can utilize that into your table fare. And I know we've talked a whole lot about buying direct from our farmers, but the fact of the matter is, buying from the store is not a bad thing either.
Right. A lot
of our cow-calf producers, the cattle that are produced here in Tennessee, they go right on into the system that we talked about earlier through the stocker, the feedlot, and the packer. And those Tennessee cattle are what wind up in your Walmart freezer section.
Yeah.
And so buying from Walmart or buying from the store can still be supporting your local cattleman, just more in a roundabout way. So so long as you're buying and eating American raised beef, that's the primary take home point.
That's right.
If you're buying American beef, you're still supporting the American farmer. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what we want to encourage folks to do.
Yeah.
I taught for years that in my ag classrooms, that different proteins kind of followed with the economy. And we've seen that with these changes of smaller folks or value added products or whatever. It's not so. We know we don't have a great quality economy right now, but beef prices are some of the highest that they've seen in a long time. And so it doesn't necessarily make sense, but I think it's a lot of all the changes that we've seen. I mean, feed conversions have gotten better because of genetics, and the customer really drives the market, and they've requested, these smaller shops and whatever. But, as you say, that it doesn't work for everybody. And so that local grocery store is still very important. There's a lot of local grocery stores that have gone out of business. And so, we encourage you to support them. But I just find that overall, with the industry doing really well and a bad economy, it's just unique system. But I think
people like steak. People like their
right.
beef.
I think it's a testament to the quality of food that we're able to produce for the consumer.
Yeah.
Really, at the end of the day, I mean, demand is still high, even though the supply of beef is down and the economy is not in that great of a position, but we still want our steaks, we still want our roasts, and it's in a big part because of the quality that we're able to produce.
I think that's a good note to end on. Yeah. So eat beef and join us next time. We'll be talking about chicken. So yeah.
That's what's for dinner.
It is.
That's
What's for
right.
dinner? They didn't pay us to say that.